Hey everybody, this is Mr. Oliver. Let's go ahead and start this lesson today. Our topic is going to be on area, finding the area of circles, okay, and kind of all the things that go along with that. So let's go through some basic information here about circles, about the area of circles at least. And right here, let's kind of just do a general description here of area. But the area is the total amount of square units that are contained inside a circle. You ever heard the phrase square that circle before? And I think this is kind of where it comes from, because squares don't fit really nicely in circles, as you can see right here. But yeah, we're talking about how many square units are inside of a circle. So if we wanted to figure out the area of this, we can literally count them. Like that's about 1, that's about 2. I know it's not perfect, but I'm kind of estimating here. 3 and 4 and 5, and we can just keep counting all those squares, which is kind of a tedious way of doing it. But that's what's, when you're finding area, whether it's a circle, whether it's a rectangle, a parallelogram, a trapezoid, whatever you're doing, you're always finding how many square units fit inside of it. And I say square units because we're not sure what kind of square unit it is. It could be square centimeters, it could be square inches, it could be square feet, which is pretty common. Square miles, if you're talking about a map, if you're talking about like a state of Illinois, we're going to talk about how many square miles the state of Illinois is, or DuPage County, or the city of Warrenville. All right, now let's go down to the formula of the area for a circle. Now these formulas, like I said, they're not interchangeable. You kind of have to stick with them. But the area of a circle is going to require you to know what pi is. And for a lot of our problems that we've been doing, at least lately, we've been using 3.14 for pi. All right, so we're going to do pi times radius squared. So that's what that's all about. So R stands for the radius. So radius squared, what does that mean? That means radius times the radius. Now hopefully as 7th graders, you understand now what squared means. You don't just automatically assume, oh, squared means times 2. And that's not what it means one bit. Remember, squared means multiplying by itself. So 5 squared is not 10. 5 squared is 5 times 5, which is 25. 6 squared is not 12, it's 36. 6 times 6. 10 squared isn't 20, it's 100, because it's 10 times 10. So remember, when you're squaring something, you're multiplying it by itself, not by 2. The only time you can mix up multiplying by 2 and squaring is when the number is literally the number 2. If we do the number 2, 2 squared is 2 times 2, and that's going to be 4. But that's the only time that that actually kind of works, or the fluke where that kind of comes out that way. So area equals pi times radius squared. Okay, so let's get right into our first example right here. This one is just asking us to find the area of the circle. So again, we're going to use pi. We're going to use 3.14 for pi. And I mean, you don't have to do this, but it doesn't hurt to make kind of an organized list of all the things that are kind of important to the problem. So if, radius, of course, the formula for area of a circle is pi times radius squared. Well, yeah, of course we're going to need the radius. But why don't we just, while we're at it, just find radius and diameter every time we're doing this, because it doesn't hurt to know what those numbers are. So right here, this 6 right here, it's right along this long line here. So I'm going to assume that that is representing the diameter. So the radius of this circle is going to be half that, right? Half, so I'm just estimating, of course, where it is, but half of 6 is 3. So that's got to be 3 centimeters right there. It's just a matter of using the area formula. So area is going to be pi times radius. Now the radius this time is 3 squared. 3 squared. All right, so for this problem, we're going to use 3.14 for pi. And then 3 squared is 9. So you're just going to do 3.14 times 9. And that's it. When I was all through with this problem, I got 28.26. Okay, so when we write down an area, remember, whenever we're doing area, just like the description describes, just like the description says, area is always square units. So it's 28 28.26, and in this case it's square centimeters. Just kind of the way I did my notes here was that the example that I put up here is actually the same kind of circle in example 1. So that has a radius, I don't know if you guys noticed that, but that right here, this has a radius of 3, and I mean these are just unit squares, but we'll call them 3 centimeters. Right there, that's got 3. It's also 6, you know, if you look at the diameter, it's also 6 units across. You can do that. But now we can kind of figure out, again, you can just kind of estimate or eyeball some of these numbers. But let me kind of start with the ones that I know that are complete squares. So like this would be 1, this is 2. I'm just going to literally put the numbers in there. 4. And then I would say like these are practically squares. I mean, they're just a little bit off. I would say that these are also practically squares up here. So I'm going to call that 19 and 20. And so we have to get to that, you know, because our literal answer was 28.26. So right now we're at 20. So maybe right here, this is practically a full square. So I'll call that 21 and 22. I'll call this 23 and 24 right there. Now these right here are halves. See what I'm talking about right there? So those are halves. So we can call that, I'm just going to call that 25 and 25. All right. Same thing right here. This is practically a half. And that's practically a half right there. So I'll call that 26 and 26. And then these are practically, I'm estimating here. I'm not trying to be perfect. But right here, those are like halves of each other. So like I'll call this 27, 27, because together they make one whole square. And right here, those are halves. So that makes 28 and 28. And of course, our actual answer was 28.26. But you can see just by estimating with all that, you know, with all the square units in there, yeah, we got pretty close to the actual answer there. Anyhow, that was just kind of a diversion right there. But yeah, you can do that. I wouldn't recommend trying to draw square units inside of a circle, though. That's definitely going to be a recipe for kind of making mistakes. So just kind of stick with the math when you do these problems. All right, so number 2, example 2 here, find the area of the following circle and use 3.14 for pi. And just like on the last problem, I want you to list the radius and the diameter. So what is this number right here? This is showing, you know, a shorter segment here that starts at the middle and goes to the edge of the circle. And that would be, is that the radius or is that the diameter? That is the radius. So I'm going to put 2.4 here. And not that we need it, but I'm just going to go ahead and do that. If we were looking for the diameter would be double that, which would be 4.8. And I should label these things, by the way. So that's 2.4 feet. Now, as usual, I sometimes I think I've recommended this before, but like when you're using a formula, it doesn't hurt to have that formula kind of on hand or and nearby or close to the problem, just so that when you start putting in numbers, you know where everything goes. All right, so pi is going to be 3.14. And then this time around, radius is going to be 2.4. And so we definitely want to use a calculator. Now make sure when you do, you know, just kind of little just reminders here, make sure you do exponents first, because remember exponents, according to PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, you know, remember exponents comes before multiplication or division. So we definitely got to do the 2.4. If you do 3.14 times 2.4 first, you're going to miss it. So you want to do 2.4 squared, which is 2.4 times 2.4. It's not 4.8. Now, I didn't say to round these or anything, but you know, sometimes the answer for this one comes out to kind of be a long decimal. But I'm going to write the whole thing because it doesn't tell us to round. So 18.08 I don't know if you guys can hear the thunder. It is really storming around here. So you got 18.0864, and this is square feet, because area is always square units. Always, always, always square units. Number 3 is just a problem where, hopefully this doesn't confuse you either, but a lot of times on IXL there's going to be problems where they don't give you a picture to go with, and I hope that doesn't throw you off. But you just kind of have to base it on the information that you're given. So this one says you're looking for the area of a circle with a 15 centimeter diameter. So the 15 centimeter diameter, well, if the diameter is 15, what is the radius? Is the radius half the diameter, or is it double the diameter? And if you have paid attention, you would know that it's going to be half. So you're going to do 15 divided by 2, which is 7.5 or 7.5 centimeters. All right, so now we have, this number right here is pretty important to this problem. So now we're going to do this. I'm going to write out the formula again. Pi times radius squared. Pi is 3.14, and radius is 7.5 squared. Now make sure you multiply, make sure you do the exponent first. So you can get 3.14 times 7.5 times 7.5, so that's what I got for that, and now I'm going to multiply that by pi. And again, it doesn't ask us to round, so I'm going to put all the numbers I see on my calculator screen. And that is the answer, 176.625, or 625 thousandths square centimeters. Right, now this is the only problem that's a little bit different from all the rest, but this one right here, let's read it first. For example 4, it says, find the area of a circle. Find the area of a circle if the circle has a circumference. Now, what's this circumference business? I thought we were done talking about circumference. We did circumference the previous couple lessons here. Why do we have to do circumference for area? Well, let's get to that. But it says the circumference is 37.68. Now, for this particular problem right here, is there a mistake that's been made? Is this written wrong? How could we figure out the area if all we have is circumference? Well, we know that circumference is pi times diameter. That will equal the circumference. So we know that pi is 3.14. It's about 3.14, I should say, because that's always an estimate. That's a rounded number. The diameter is something we don't know, but the circumference is something we do know. We know it's 37.68. So now that you have that, does that look like something that you can possibly solve? And it probably is. Just divide both sides by pi. So I know what you're thinking. You're like, why are we doing circumference? What does circumference have to do with this? Well, let's just bear with me here, and I'll show you what I mean. All right, when you do 37.68 divided by 3.14, I ended up, on my calculator, I got 12. So I'm going to put 12 inches. That's not 12 square inches, it's just a distance. All right, so we're saying that that's 12. And if that's 12, what does that make the radius? Well, the radius is going to be half that. So that's going to be 6. So see what I mean? See how those numbers kind of help us, lead us to figuring out an answer for area? Because it's leading us right there. So we've got now the most important number for determining the area of a circle, which is radius, because we have to use that area formula, which is pi times radius squared. Pi times radius squared. So pi is 3.14. The radius is 6. So you're going to do pi times 6 squared. Now make sure when you do 6 squared, is that 12 or is that 6 times 6, which is not 12, which is 36, right? So we're going to make sure we do things the right way. Exponents come before multiplication. So you're going to do 3.14 times 36. I've got 113.04. Now this is the area, so we're always going to put square units. So that's it. All right, that was kind of an interesting problem. When you think about it, it shows you that, if you have circumference of a circle, that's enough to tell you even the area. So if you know how round a circle is, if you know the distance around a circle, that's terrible drawing right there, but you know what I mean. If you know how round one time around it is, then you should be able to divide that by pi, and that will tell you what the diameter is. And if you know what the diameter tells you what the radius is, because the radius is half the diameter. And then now that you know the radius, you can just plug it into the radius. You can plug it into the area formula, pi times radius squared. And that gave us 113.04 square inches. So that was that. Sorry if that was kind of confusing. All right, guys, so that does it for your lesson. Hopefully, finding area of a circle is not too difficult. Again, really the main takeaway from this lesson is knowing the formula for area of a circle, which is pi times radius squared. It's also important to know and to remind yourself that squared, when you're squaring things, does not mean times 2. Squared means times itself. 7 squared means 7 times 7. 9 squared means 9 times 9. It's not 18, it's 81. Make sure you guys all understand that distinction between squaring something and multiplying by 2, because they're not the same, or unless you're doing a base of 2 to the second power. That's the only time you can get away with multiplying by 2 and squaring, and that's the same thing, but not all examples are like that. Okay, everybody, so that does it. Everyone have a great day, and everybody also enjoy your weekend. Take care.